Kathe Petchel.
Kathe Ligon.
Hello. Hey, friends. We have 176 friends here with us today, Kathe, and I'm so excited about this content because, as you know, this fits into my bucket of management by walking around, which is really hard to do, but the research and connections to other industries that you have to talk to us about today are awesome. So really excited for this feedback, and thank you for joining, guys. I'm going to get us started with a couple of things to tell you guys about that are going on in the company that we would like for you to have the opportunity to participate in, and then we'll jump right into Kathe's content. And I'm talking fast here because she's got a tremendous amount of content and helpful ideas to talk to us about. So today what we have prepared for you guys is a quick update on what's happening at Hinge. Kathe's going to talk to us about figure eights. She's going to talk to us about the morning message, love that concept, and then how to take that information forward and make it work in your schools. So first of all, what's happening at Hinge, we have two events. Well, actually, we just finished one of the events. So we had our Thrive event in Boston last Friday. We had 100 guests there, and we had an awesome time. It was jam-packed full of wonderful information. That was our annual Thrive workshop. We have just open registration for our Shift conference, our 3-day conference that will be held in Austin, February 21st through the 23rd. We're going to have a focus this year on succession planning. What are your options? What do you need to plan for? How do you put the pieces in place to get your company ready for its future? We have some fabulous speakers. So far on the list is our celebrity keynote, John Warlow, who wrote the book Built to Sell. I completely recommend the book. It's fabulous, quick read and story form. We have Roger Neugebauer, and Roger is the founder of Childcare Information Exchange and the World Forum for Childcare, which is being held in China in April of this year, and both Kathe and I will be speakers there. We're excited about that. And also Bruce Karpus, the CEO of Creme de la Creme, will be there as a keynote to talk to us about operating schools in urban developments. We're limiting this to 300 attendees, so if you're interested in joining us, check that at shiftchildcareleaders.com and get registered. We're in our early pricing from now until November 1st, so we'd love to have you guys there. The other thing to tell you about, Kathe Petchel will shoot me, is Thrive Consulting, which is the division of our company that Kathe leads that helps clients on a consulting basis with different areas of their company, the financial area, marketing, staffing, branding, real estate pricing, and it's really a deep dive into what the issues are in your company. Kathe can talk to you more about that. I think she's pretty booked up this year, but I think she's talking with people about possible projects toward the end of the year or in early 2019. So those are two things to tell you about. I am going to now turn this over to Kathe Petchel and let her start with her information about figure eights in your schools. Thanks, Kathe.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to see everyone here today, even if it's just virtual. And thank you, everyone that came to our Boston conference. It was fabulous. We had such a good time, and I hope everyone took away a lot of great information and takeaways for their staff. Today, I'm talking about one of the things I love to do is look at other industries and just other relationships and see how we can model in our industry. We have so many challenges in our industry, and I keep thinking we can't be the only ones. So I'm modeling today what we can learn about the restaurant industry. And then what I learned when I was a public school teacher, just in terms of easy communication every day. But first, I always have a book every month. And so this book that I'm recommending this month, it's really good. It completely weaves all the things we try to do at Hinge Brokers and Thrive Consulting, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits by Vern Harnish, and he's also the author of Scaling Up, which again is a great business read. This book is really good because the habits, who doesn't want to be a Rockefeller, right? Or at least we can learn from the Rockefellers. So the habits, Mastering Growth is one chapter. We do that at Shift and at our Thrive conferences. Mastering the right people doing the right thing at the right time. That's what we're talking about today when we do our figure 8. So I love that. Mastering the strategic, one-page strategic plan. Again, that's a really good deep dive into what we're doing at Shift and Thrive. Using core values, mastering the use of core values. We talk about this every month on our webinars, and we talk about it when we do our speaking engagements, and we write about it. So core values, I think that's the most essential element when you're getting started, and then as you're looking at growing your business. Today, we're working on mastering organizational alignment and focus, and when I talk about the figure 8s and the morning messages, it's all about just staying focused, having the right people on the right seat in the bus, and then being aligned in the right way. What are our goals and where are we going? Speaking of mastering goals, my book from the last couple months, Traction. I look like I'm a librarian or a bookstore commercial, but Traction really talks about what are your rocks? What are the main goals you're trying to work on as a team? So that would be, in Traction, it's weekly meetings, but then quarterly goals. So this book covers that as well. I love when books have similar themes. And then chapter 7 is employee feedback. We talk a lot about that. Well, just to be a librarian again, Dream Manager really helps you get the staff clear on what their dreams are. And then the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace really, again, helps you focus on knowing individually what each staff member cares about and what drives them, honestly. It helps a lot with growing staff in terms of career ladders. And also something we introduced at our conference in Boston, the STAY interview. So both of those books I highly recommend. Those are repeat recommendations. And then the daily, weekly executive meeting. The figure 8 is similar to that. And then the brand promise. And then they end with mastering the art of bank financing. Again, that relates directly to what we do at Hinge Brokers and with our consulting with Thrive. I would also add the REITs and the small business loans. So good, really good book, really good read. So this is my recommendation for this month. And as everything, when you're growing a business, proper planning prevents poor performance. So we're talking a lot about what you can do, how we're similar to the restaurant industry. Believe it or not, we're really similar. And but it always starts with having the right staff hired. And that's, all the latest webinars we did had to do with the right staff being hired, having systems in place, doing training, and then of course the follow-up. So all of those 4 things that I think are key variables should be in place. So how are we like the restaurant industry? Oh my gosh. Okay, so we'll just hit all the dangers the restaurant industry has and how many of them could be and are similar to us. So in the restaurant industry, they worry about food spoilage. Of course, you don't want to have your customers have food poisoning. You also don't want to have to throw away a lot of food. That's a little bit less in our industry, but those of you that are on the food program, I know you throw a lot of food away and there's so many rules and restrictions to that. So again, that does affect your bottom line. The risk of Yelpers or your Facebook reviews or your website reviews, anyone that's doing a review or any kind of negative testimonial could be writing a review about you. In the restaurant industry, they come in for 1 hour or an hour and a half meal and can make or break your business, honestly, if you're a restaurant owner. So for us, at least, we have days and days, weeks and weeks, or months and months where someone might write a negative review. But again, in the restaurant industry, it's much rougher, in my opinion. The risk of servers or chef making errors and putting customers at risk. We have that too. Think about all the allergies. I've been in the business about 35 years, and there used to be very few allergies, and now, we're peanut free or peanut sensitive. So the allergy risk is very high in the restaurant industry, but we have that too. Choking, obviously in the restaurant industry, all people do at the restaurant is eat. So their risk of choking is much higher than ours. But how many of you have had a child choke or have to do any kind of emergency first aid? So choking is definitely an issue. Just last week at one of our schools, we had a little Lego or a little loose part kind of in someone's ear, and we had to intervene on that. So it happens. It happens when we're letting children explore. It happens when we're asking them to take the no thank you bites. So choking is an issue that we have, and again, share with the restaurant industry. The thefts are a really interesting one. Obviously, restaurants are more likely to have the cash thefts than we do. Like Kathe Ligon says, you know, if someone wants to pay you in cash and that's the only way you're going to get paid, you're probably going to take the cash. And how many of us have had thefts with cash? Or maybe we don't even know we've had it. I know we do pizza every Tuesdays and Fridays as a little add-on. It's really a little fundraiser. And so it's the $2 pizza slices, $2 for a slice of pizza. You know, we could be losing some money on that. Again, restaurants much more though. Thefts of stealing food and paper products. About 20 years ago, one of our guys, Mr. Jared, was caught taking like rolls and rolls of toilet paper. He was a single guy, fabulous teacher. Kids and parents loved him, but he was my toilet paper thief. And I happen to know it because somebody saw him, but how many times do we have that? I know nowadays we all, or most of us, have cameras, and so do restaurants, but it still puts you at risk. Long hours with overworked staff. Gosh, how many of you can relate to that? When we're in a hiring cycle like we are now, where staff are having we're having a lot of trouble keeping staff, and honestly, even recruiting and retaining staff. The long hours that our staff work before we get the new people on board leads to a very high stress level. This is one we don't have. Well, I hope we don't. Alcohol and issues related to it in terms of at least not having alcohol at our schools. Can you imagine? The poor restaurant industry, they risk serving the underage drinkers. They risk alcohol theft. I mean, who wouldn't want to steal a bottle of wine versus toilet paper, right? Probably the wine's going to go first. I don't know. And then drinking on the job. So while we could, you know, have that once in a while with a specific situation, and maybe someone is having, you know, a personal problem or an issue, we might have the drinking on the job, but in general, we don't. And then food prices, again, back to if you're serving a lot of food, or if you're in the food program, food prices can be an issue. And it interestingly relates to all the climate change. So that the fresh fruits and produce that we want to do, or the really good, healthy, organic food, is a little bit pricier. And we still have more. We can move to the next slide. Wait, there's more. How many of you have had wage and hour claims? Maybe you're not working with the Department of Labor and you have an audit, either scheduled or unscheduled, surprise or no surprise, but you still have staff that come to you and say, I think I worked longer, maybe they didn't clock in or out. So restaurant industry is overrun with that. They tend to have so much turnover that I think to get their systems in place is really difficult. Identity breaches. How many times have you gotten one of those emails? You're at a restaurant or a store, in this particular case a restaurant, and your identity has been stolen, or your credit card has been duplicated. Sometimes you walk past those machines and people take pictures. Gas stations do it too, but the identity breaches for credit cards is a big risk for restaurants. Still a risk for us, and again, that's something I think we're similar in. Foodborne illnesses, we talked about the poisoning earlier, but also let's not forget just the contamination, for instance, raw chicken, and then noroviruses and whatnot. So if something happens to a customer at a restaurant, boy, that health department is in within hours. Same thing with us. And then obviously, intense competition is something we all struggle with. We work hard on doing our enrolling and having great core values for our staff and our families, family culture and staff culture. Restaurants have that too, and they have to fight intense competition. Another one restaurants have that we share, accidents including slips and slides. And I'm not talking about the outdoor slide for the children. I'm talking about slipping and sliding during cleanup and whatnot for restaurants. Also the cuts and burns and fires for restaurants. Luckily, we don't have much risk of the fire in terms of with our kitchens, but still, how many of you have to fight with the fire marshal where you've got too many beautiful art projects displayed, or curtains, or the cute clotheslines with your Reggio looking art projects displayed, which is completely what we want to do for children, but the fire marshal might not appreciate it. Dirty restrooms. How many of you go into a restaurant and make a judgment about that restaurant? Same with our parents when they go into our spaces where children are potty training and the children forget to flush the toilet, or there's a mop bucket around. Again, there's judgments on that, and it's a risk for us, and it's a risk for our reputation if we don't have those spaces clean. And then of course, sky high insurance. So all of those reasons to tell you, I think we're very similar to the restaurant industry. But the main reason we're similar to the restaurant industry is that we have a very high turnover rate. The restaurant industry, though, it's worse, 73 to 150% turnover. So it could be like 3 times the staff turnover in a restaurant industry a year, where ours is much less than that, still very high. 30 to 40%, for instance, tends to be an average. It's related to our unemployment rate. It's related to the mindset of millennials, for instance. It's going to also affect us with our Generation Zs. That's the age group coming after our millennials. They're about 3 to 5 years old right now to 19 years old. So we need to make sure that we're shoring up all the systems in place to make sure that we train our staff really well to keep them. So again, similar, again, ours is much lower. So now that I've gotten you worried and deciding you're never ever going to do a restaurant, we've got some systems to offer that we've borrowed from the restaurant industry that will help us. So I think having a strong training and systems in place is a cornerstone of a consistent and successful restaurant or preschool. We spent most of the year focusing on recruiting, training, and retaining staff with our webinars, and now we're going to dig into a few systems. So this system is called the Figure 8. And it's just an easy way that we can model from the restaurant industry how to help staff succeed, and ultimately your children have success and the parent customers be happy by walking around. So why do we love the Figure 8? It's super easy to explain. Who doesn't love? I used to teach first grade, and I love teaching how to do the Figure 8. It's such a fun, curvy number. So Figure 8 is super fun to explain, very, very visual. And when we talk about adult learners and they think about the Figure 8, it's super easy. It's super easy to visualize, easy to teach. It's an easy to follow system that leads to habits. And one thing I like to say about habits, and this is like actually 2 things. Habits are created in usually about 21 days. So it's 21 days to develop a habit. That's taken from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, old book, another one of my favorite books. But think about it like this. It takes at least 21 days to lose a habit. So if your staff are in the very bad habits, you're going to have to be really patient if you're coaching something like a Figure 8. A Figure 8 will take at least 21 days to develop a habit, just like anything else. So if they're in bad habits of checking things in your building, you'll have to be really patient. And then the 4th reason we love the Figure 8 is that it has redundancy and checks and balances. And so we're going to dig into Figure 8. For the restaurant Figure 8, for the restaurant Figure 8, think about driving to your favorite restaurant. And I'm talking more lower to mid-priced restaurant rather than the higher end restaurant, a restaurant that has lots and lots of people, especially and across the generations and age groups. You got the babies coming in and the little toddlers coming in. You got the elderly people in walkers, people with canes, and then just like the regular old people coming in to get a quick lunch or maybe a leisurely meal. So in restaurants, they're going to start in the parking lot and scan the whole parking lot. They'll be looking at basically curb appeal. They'll look at maybe their signage out front. They might look at their mailbox, and they'll have it all written on a systematic form and check out and I'll bump down to the bottom for a minute. It's done systematically twice a day. A different person does the morning and the end of the day figure 8. And that's, again, for that redundancy. And it also helps with cross-training. So if one assistant manager comes in at 6 in the morning, restaurant people, gosh, their schedules, I should have said that too. Their schedules are way worse than ours. Can you imagine? We close at 6 or 6:30 and they're open till midnight. We open at 6 or 6:30, but the bakers and the regular food prep people come in much earlier than that. So, so someone in the beginning of the day would do the figure 8, and then a different person at the end of the day would do the same figure 8, perhaps in reverse. And then corrections for a restaurant figure 8. And again, because of all their risks, their corrections should be done immediately. So if they have food issues, it should be corrected right away. For instance, food storage. Maybe they haven't salted or sanded or put down the ice melt product. They're going to do that right away. In the restaurant industry, being really responsive is as important as in our industry being really responsive. And then anything should be recorded so that if the person doing the figure 8 in a restaurant industry goes ahead and makes the correction, the person actually ultimately responsible should be told and retrained or cross-trained to make the correction stick into that 21 days for the habit. And again, being really patient is important. Back to the figure 8 and staying on this slide for another minute. They're looking at the front parking lot, heading to the front door and waiting area, maybe where the hostess station is. They'll go through the beverage and server area, looking and making sure everything's ready. Are the glasses clean? Do you have all the cutlery ready to go for the day? Into the dining room and checking each table. And I know at restaurants, table placement and the way tables are set, the tablecloths or no tablecloths, surfaces clean, super important. Just like in our classrooms, guys, we want to have our rooms, in my opinion, be tour ready at all times. Honestly, and I say this to my staff all the time, you know, gosh, if you get a parent walking in and your room looks like a mess, you better hope they don't have their iPhone and taking a picture and putting it on social media that day. So you really want to keep up with the physical appearance of your building, just like the restaurant industry does. Big one in the restaurant industry would be the restrooms. We talked about that a few minutes ago, where you want to make sure that the restrooms are as clean as the rest of the building. And because if a restroom's dirty, it makes me wonder what they're doing in the kitchen. If they don't have enough staff to keep the restroom clean, who's cooking my food? That's just totally gross. I talked about this past weekend at our Thrive event, where we talked about for parents walking in and making a first impression for a tour, if the pots of flowers are dead, the parent might wonder how much attention to detail we're going to have with the children. And it might not be really safety. They might not jump to really worrying, but they just might think, I wonder if there's attention on the curriculum and whatnot. Then back to restaurants again, the prep area will be really important that they'll check. Kitchen stations, they'll go into the freezer and check. And you can see, I'm just walking through in my mind and hopefully in your mind, the way a restaurant is set up in a specific manner. They'll go to the office area, the storage area, break room, time clock, and then out the back door to where the dumpster is. Perhaps those milk crates and whatnot are outside, perhaps the gross mop buckets, anything that they need to look at to make corrections. So that's how a restaurant would do a figure 8. Now we're bumping to how we might do a figure 8 in our preschool industry. Figure 8, very similar. And I'm giving you examples, but what I want you to do is go through your building in a systematic way and do your own figure 8. Again, the idea would be it's the same exact way every day. It's almost like when you're getting company at your house and you know you're kind of used to the kitchen table being messy, and that's where everybody puts all their stuff, their homework and their keys and their backpacks and lunch boxes, and you kind of get a little immune to it. In a business case, you can't be immune to it. You gotta look with fresh eyes every day. So if it's done in a systematic way by the same person at one part of the day, someone different at the other end of the day, it's a really good system to model after. So you'll look at your mailbox and your signage. You'll look at your parking lot and the exterior. For us, we actually also have to look at all the space around our playgrounds, around our outdoor yards, Or like we have a soccer field at one of our schools. So actually walking down to the soccer field before or after school holidays, when all those public school kids or private school kids are out, that's, you know, they'll go maybe hang out in your parking lot, hopefully not, but you'll want to make sure that nobody has been in your parking lot over holidays or long weekends, or that it's a good place for even staff once in a while might leave their car parked in your parking lot over the weekend. Maybe they're going out of town. You want to really make sure, what would the snapshot be if someone were coming to film your school or to take pictures? How many times, we might not know this, how many times when new people are moving to your area, might they drive around and look at preschools on a Saturday or Sunday? Poke in the windows, look around at the front door. Maybe you have, and I recommend this actually, you can get them at Lowe's or where Home Depot or any of your hardware stores. The flyer for all about your program should be outside of your door or put on your mailbox, so that when those people, kind of the looky-loos looking around town thinking, I might go to that preschool, they're being able to grab a flyer. But again, even on the weekends or at night, that's a really good time for parents to go around, get a look at the physical aspect of your building and see quite a lot. So I would be really careful about that as well. This is one of my favorite parts. I talked about the porch and the flower pots already, garden beds similar to the flower pots. I toured a school for a client about 2 weeks ago, and the director gave a tour. It was actually a secret shop. The director gave a tour and said, oh, well, we just finished our gardening project for the summer, but we haven't cleaned it up yet. And what I wish she would have said is, A, had it cleaned up all ready to go for fall, or told me the children will be doing that. That's part of our curriculum. Then with all those weeds growing, I would have thought, oh, she's turning it into a learning activity. What's a weed? What's not a weed? The whole garden was a weed and it looked a little bit unkempt, rather than a fresh garden ready for pumpkin planting, for instance. Door handles and glass doors in the front, super important and really gross to parents. We're so used to sticky fingers and we're holding children's hands and helping them wash their hands. Children love to touch things. So the front doors of our buildings, super important that those door handles aren't sticky and gross. Parents don't mind their own children's sticky little fingers, but when they think 150 little sticky fingers, it just is attention to detail, back to what I talked about with the restaurants and contamination, keeping children and actually your staff really healthy and safe. So making sure that we really have things in place to cover and make sure the building looks clean and actually feels clean. When we talk about first impressions, we talk a lot about using the 5 senses. And so one of the 5 senses is touch, of course. And so when things feel sticky, it's just a turnoff, I think. Think about airlines and your seat, your tray table at the airline. It's just a big turnoff. Then you start thinking, how many people have sat in this airline seat? Same thing with the door at the preschool. How many people have touched it? It actually could be a turnoff in terms of your enrollment, that parents could very subtly think, I think I'm going to put little darling at the in-home care down the street where there's only 5 children, instead of all the benefits of having a bigger school, which is, of course, the redundancy and safety, the curriculum piece, all the reasons we know. But anyway, back to door handles. I'm a little stickler on that one. Glass on your front doors. Shout out to Better Beans Branding, one of my favorite people in the whole world, Thad Joyner. Came to visit my school and did a rebranding for all 3 of my schools, which are located in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I was super proud that I had won all these Best of Charlottesville awards. #1 preschool, #1 childcare, best teacher, best place to work, all different. And I had every single award stuck on my door. You actually couldn't even see in the building, because thinking naively, oh my gosh, I have to tell everybody we're the best because that's a good way to get parents to enroll. And that would be a really good way to leverage staff and recruit staff, which is all true. But there's other ways to do it rather than blocking your door, not having transparency. And also, and this was my biggest aha, why in the world would we give the newspaper or the little family magazine that most important real estate about our program, and we slap it all over the door, and it was all about the newspaper or the magazine promoting my school as #1, but their logo and their name was big and bold, and he just gave me such a hard time about it and said, just take that down now. Pretty much wouldn't leave the building without me making that clean. So keep that door clean. I think subtly being open and being transparent in your classrooms. I love when I walk into schools and I see those big wide windows in the hallway that you can see in and the children can see out. First of all, it's great for lighting, but it's just that subtle transparency. You'll want to make sure your lobby desk and greeting area is super clean and ready to go. Just those little details, like the coffee station has plentiful amounts of coffee, and the coffee brand is on brand with your brand. The greeting area and the desk area shouldn't be too cluttered, and the sign-in area and parent and staff boards should be very neat and clean. Again, back to attention to detail for parents. Parents definitely want to know who the teachers are. So if you have a biography board and the teacher left 2 months ago and you still have her picture posted, that's going to look like you don't have a lot of attention to detail. Or worse, in the preschool world, oh my gosh, we don't have a toddler teacher hired for Miss Henrietta that just left last month. Henrietta's been gone, and I don't have anybody to replace her, so I still have her picture up. Just take the picture down and just keep it clean, and don't call attention to it. To look up and down, sideways, using your 5 senses. It's all in the details. The public restrooms, that would be a detail about making sure there's enough paper towels, making sure there's enough toilet paper. Mr. Jerry didn't steal all the toilet paper, hopefully. In your kitchen, the appliances. These, of course, the kitchen has a lot to do with your health department and keeping up your health department rules. So when you're doing a figure 8, it's not actually an inventory or a safety or health department check. It's that first impression, quick look, that if the health department comes in, they're not going to dig too far. It looks all in order. Of course they are going to dig. If a parent comes in during a tour to look at your kitchen doesn't look like it's just a disaster. It looks organized and clean. Same with the laundry room. Laundry rooms tend to be a catch-all, almost like a storage. And so this is what happens to me anyway. When we're washing children's like linens and whatnot, for instance, if someone forgets to take the towels or the sheets or whatnot, the bibs out of the washer and leaves them overnight, worst case over a weekend, and then you get that smelly mold smell. 5 senses, the sense of smell is a big turnoff. Again, attention to detail. Making sure everything's locked is really important too. Anytime I'm doing a tour of my building, I make a really big show to open the lock and kind of click it kind of hard so the parents know, oh, things in the laundry room, there's dangerous chemicals. We store our cleaning things there too. And everything's really safe. I make sure to point out, this is locked. This space is locked. Oh, you couldn't just open our door to get in our building. It was locked. Classrooms should always be tour ready, especially if they're empty. If they're not empty, they should just be kid friendly, of course. But when, for instance, if you're doing a tour and children are on the playground, there should be some semblance of what happened during the day that you wouldn't need to explain too much to the parent. Oh, we've just cleaned up and the children are outside in the yard or the outdoor classroom, and they just completed painting, so they might see the painting drying. Having the classrooms look really clean and organized, and also having specific areas in the classroom designated, rather than, oh my gosh, we just had free play, or we just had free choice or centers time. And just everybody walked outside. Children's restrooms, huge, big deal. I would also add diaper stations to that category. Parents really want to know, especially those potty training guys, the toddler twos, that you have a system in place for your potty training, and that the children, you're going to have the right diaper on little darling and not borrow someone else's diapers. So children's restrooms, potty training, and spaces, really important. Hallways, nooks, and crannies. One of the schools I toured recently for a client had beautiful hallways, super wide, expansive space, and there was kid stuff in the hallways. That was part of their core values. Part of their curriculum and their philosophy was the whole interior space is a space for people to greet each other. It almost like a little town or city. We're greeting, we're passing each other in the hall, and it's part of being a school community. They were able to articulate that on the tour, and it just made me feel like I wish I had a little preschooler to enroll there. It was fabulous. But if your hallway is cluttered with a mop bucket, for instance, or cluttered with old notes from parents, or maybe the fall leaves tracked in by the children, that's a completely different issue. So looking up and down. Interior and exit lighting, really important. Exit lighting has everything to do with the fire department and safety, of course. Again, if we don't have those exit light bulbs done, you want to make sure that your handyman or someone on your staff is handling that right away. But interior lighting is something that gets us a lot. Lighting is so much more advanced than if you have an older building, when we build our older buildings. So there's so many choices. There's ways to save money on lighting, but there's nothing worse than a really dim, dark hallway. You want it to be open and transparent, and everything should be well lit, preferably natural lighting, of course. Your storage space for your cots and your nap mats is important too. You want to make sure that the space is per licensing or health department regulations the way you store. But when a bunch of nap mats or cots are just kind of stuffed to the side, I know why that happens. A parent came in and surprised us with a tour. There's a question or issue, but when we shove stuff to the side, we want to make sure that we go back and get that fixed up. Again, figure eight will help with that. I toured a school that was very underperforming about a month ago, and underperforming to the point where maybe they had 4 classrooms completely empty. They were storage rooms instead of classrooms. What I coached them on is, I know your school isn't full yet and you're really working to get that enrollment, but when you have classrooms that look like storage rooms, cans of paint, it was pretty weak looking building, honestly. That a good 8-hour day or a good weekend with a couple people coming in could have fixed it lickety split, and it would have made me impressed if I'm a parent touring. So be really careful about your empty spaces. Outdoor spaces and kid equipment, I think we're so good at that. We're super strong on our resilient surfaces and mulch and whatnot, but I still would make sure that you're looking at all of that. Again, trash on the playground, inside and outside of the fences. I don't know how many times the staff drive me crazy when maybe they don't want to have a water table out that day for outdoor classroom, which drives me crazy because I think any kind of activities like that, sensory activities done outside, is even more valuable than inside. But they might put something over the fence for a particular reason. That looks really bad. So be really careful about that. On your checklist, and so what I'm saying I would recommend is go through your building visually, maybe not doing it, just do it in your mind first and hit the highlights of what you want to do. Then go through it and fill in what you've missed, really specific, and then come up with specific things like we have on this checklist. Signage on your classroom doors, back to that important real estate. Bulletin boards, making sure everything's time sensitive. Children's cubbies, that can be gross. How many of you have had ants come in, a little ant party on the weekend, and on Monday morning, because little darling has left maybe the sandwich in the lunch bag or the cute little lunch box, and the ant party has started. So really checking your children's cubbies. Classroom refrigerators and common space. And then don't forget about the adult desks. A couple things on that. Making sure that your computers are password protected. Making sure, because we store a lot of confidential things, information about children and their families on our computers. Also photographs of children if you're using your tadpoles or Kid Report or similar apps. And then workspace. Sometimes children move to another room at the end of the day or go to the art room or go and have PE or dance, making sure that everything is put away. And then office and meeting spaces, don't forget the director office. That tends to be a catch-all place too. We put all our extra stuff in there, make sure that that looks organized and clean as well. And so then the next thing we'll do is just how would you, an alternative to a figure eight would be just doing a list. Instead of one list, you would do a list of 5. You could divide your figure eight into 5 categories. You could do a licensing category. You could do something about curriculum category. I'm waiting for it to fill in. You could do a general facility category. You could do a support area category with your entrance and exteriors, or a classroom category. So don't think your figure 8 has to be, oh my gosh, my whole building and this big figure 8 that takes an hour to do. It should be pretty quick. It's really just a snapshot in your brain. Did any of you read the books? Cam Jansen, they're like the little second grade level books, really popular maybe 15 or 20 years ago. And the little child took pictures in her mind, and she had this photographic memory. Go through your building like that and take pictures in your mind. Think of what's the most important thing for you, and then coach on that. So if you don't want to do the whole figure 8, do a figure 5, go, and it wouldn't still be the same, it would still be the figure 8 walking around the building. It would just be fewer items and more targeted areas. You can move to the next slide. I'm looking at the time. Tips, cross-train. I love cross-training. I love when I bring a staff member in, I like to find out what areas they love to do. You'd be surprised how many staff like to clean or how many staff like to organize. Those are the ones you want to help with your figure 8. Best practice is having several morning and afternoon staff trained on a figure 8. And then again, emphasizing, like we do in the restaurant industry, making corrections immediately. The obvious plug covers or light bulbs, but also if things that are related to the 5 senses. Something doesn't smell quite right. Everything's super sticky. It looks chaotic or disorganized. Those are things you'll want to correct right away. Anything licensing and safety, of course, that's immediate. That's even more important than a light bulb, right? Anything to do with safety for children. Items that you can't correct or needing your professional, your maintenance person, your handyman, or your plumber to come in, that should be put on a list immediately. It's so funny to me how we forget things, we put it on our list, and then we forget to be responsive. That's why I love a 1-hour turnaround, and we do that at Bright Beginnings, where if we see something, you've got 1 hour to do something with it. It's kind of just like playing catch. If someone tosses you that ball, it's in your court to handle. We're not talking today about our systems of reporting for directors. We could do that another time. But our staff and directors have systems that they use to report every day to me and our regional director to make sure, all the little details are handled. Anything that needs to be purchased, put on your purchase order right away. A lot of my friends and colleagues are using Amazon and maybe keeping a running list and getting Amazon delivered. Someone just told me over the weekend, daily. I'm still old school, about once a month, and then a credit card for those quick purchases that we need. And a really good shortcut. I know our handyman, Mr. Keith, and we love him. He has a day job, so he comes to our schools at the end of the day, maybe 4 to 6, and he's got a very scattered schedule because that's what you do when you have part-timers. You have to be flexible. He'll come in once in a while on a weekend, but sometimes in the evenings. I don't always know when Mr. Keith's going to show up. So if I've taken a picture of the door jamb or the window that needs a repair and shot him an email, he knows what materials to bring or to stop and purchase, so that helps a lot. So that kind of wraps up the part about figure 8. Figure 8 is a super easy method, and I just recommend that you create it yourself or maybe do it as a team exercise. What are the main things that we're weak on? I'd start with that. I always start with what I could improve on. And then what are the things we definitely know we need to keep track of? Back to the lobby again. Do we always have tour packets? Do we always have snacks and drinks for the families touring? How are we doing on our staff appreciation and whatnot? We're going to transition, and I'm looking at the time, and I only have a few minutes, Kathe, to start the morning messages for the public schools, but we'll go ahead and I'll give it a shot for about 10 minutes, and then we'll save 5 minutes for questions. So public school, I used to teach kindergarten and first grade before I started Bright Beginnings, and this is old-timey, but still a lot of people like pencil paper. So public schools are similar to us, except even kind of on steroids. They have larger groups of teachers and support staff to keep well informed. And they have, of course, many more children, so therefore more risks. And it's even more important in a public school, different needs and different high-risk children, different entities and subsidy groups they work with. Perhaps Head Start is in their building. They've got all kinds of speech pathologists and people in and out, so lots of people to communicate with. we developed a morning message based on what the public schools did years ago at Bright Beginnings. So the director writes the morning message and prints every day by 9 a.m. To accommodate, we do tours 9:30 and 11, which I honestly highly recommend that we look the best we can. To me, a tour is our Super Bowl, and I want to be as well prepared for a tour as I can. So we'll inform the staff by at least 9 a.m. I pick 9 a.m. because that's when most of my staff have arrived. The ones that haven't arrived, we'll look at the morning message later in the day. I've got a couple of high school and college gals that help us out in the afternoons. First thing they'll do is look at morning message when they arrive in the building to make sure they're well informed about the day's news. Staff read it by mid-morning. Our director walks around with it whenever possible, and then staff initial it. How many times do people ring a bell or buzz you or call the office and ask you, oh, I forgot, what did you say we're doing for the field trip or the apple orchard? Or when did you say my break was? We want to avoid that, and we avoid that with a morning message. As I said, staff arriving late will read an initial. Some of our staff forget, and it's just because they're busy. They can snap a picture using your tadpoles or whatever app you're using. I don't allow cell phones in our classrooms. I don't want any distractions on the children, but I do allow the iPads restricted for use with tadpoles. And so if they need to maybe process it later, they could take a picture of our morning message as well. You could also send it via your app, but that avoids, and I think that's really not as advantageous. I want my director to go around and eyeball to eyeball, almost like floor time. We're not talking about floor time today, that's another webinar. Really building that relationship very quickly with our staff. Can move to the next slide. This is the format I use at Bright Beginnings. Again, you're going to make it your own, just like we're modeling after the restaurant industry and modeling after public school. You can model after me, or you can call me and I can help you with this. I do an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. I print it off. If I'm trying to highlight something, I might use colored ink, or I might make it super pretty, or I might just take my good old-fashioned highlighter and use the highlighter. It's always going to have the date. It's going to have some type of positive greeting. Happy Wednesday, it's over the hump day. Tomorrow, don't forget this Friday, it's Jean's Day. Don't forget we're doing a potluck to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries. We're hitting news of the day and any kind of kudos. Thanks so much to Miss Margaret for helping with the tour yesterday. They enrolled, yay! You get a $50 bonus for a tour takeover. So the kudos, it's coaching, it's training, it's a kudos time. News of the day is super important to do for your morning message. So what's new and different today? It might be we've got 2 tours coming in today. It might be that someone's leaving a little bit early. It might be someone's getting ready to get married. Maybe we're having a special celebration for back to school. It might be, for instance, we're doing back to school next week. We might remind them every day of the week before back to school night what the dress code is and what their responsibilities are. Because again, we know what adult learners need. They need just what the children in our classrooms need. They need us to customize the learning, and their communication and our communication need to work together. The more we can cascade out messages to our staff in the appropriate way for them to learn, it doesn't matter that we've sent it out 5 different ways. If they're not receiving it, and sometimes they're choosing not to receive it, that's a whole different webinar. That's a willing and able webinar. But if it's their learning style, some people want to hear it, some people want to see it. If you're walking around with your morning message, you can explain it briefly. Staff news, congratulations. Maybe staff are off in, maybe next week we've got Miss Summer and Miss Sarah off. And so we might say Miss Summer's off and Miss Jasmine is subbing for her. Summer, don't forget to leave lesson plans. Any kind of news like that. Schedule changes for the day is probably the most important one. Maybe someone's leaving early. Maybe someone's taking a longer break. We talked a lot about labor and the ways to save on labor and the ways to watch our labor costs. It's 50% of our budget usually or so, depending on your enrollment and other factors. But really watching labor and knowing my staff love to know who's off first. Of course they do. who's up first in the afternoon, and maybe volunteer to be off first. So if you've already done your schedule and it's in writing, as best you can. Things happen, of course, but in general, if they know, for instance, we're overhired right now at Bright Beginnings, and that's my sweet spot. So that way, staff that call out, we've got accommodations and people to cover. So then maybe staff will take turns being off early in the afternoon. Morning message is a great place to put that. This week, here's who leaves early. Licensing and policy reminders, that's probably the most important because that has to do with making sure children are safe and we're delivering our product. Staff want to know their break schedule, but directors want to make sure we're following all the rules and providing the great product. So both of those are important. Notes about children, grandma picking up, the Smith family is on vacation next week, so that you're accommodating ratios. Notes on hiring or enrollment, contests or needs. Hey, everybody, we're looking to have an afternoon person come and cover for breaks. If you know anyone that is as good as our staff, please let us know. Don't forget there's a hiring bonus if you help us recruit a new staff member. And then tours for the day and week, super important. The such and such family with little darling by name, who's a 2-year-old, is coming in tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. They'll be touring these 3 rooms, but please be ready to greet. It's super important and impressive that our staff know the names of the children and their parents that are coming in to tour the rooms, because it just starts that relationship off on the right foot from the beginning. I'll put upcoming events, training opportunities, and so on, meetings and related notes. Scheduled breaks, super important. Here's our permanent break schedule. Every day, so-and-so goes from 12 to 1. But today's break schedule, she's leaving early, so she's not taking a break. Those are the kind of things that staff really appreciate having on your morning message. Again, it's just a 1-pager. Really quick, it should be scannable because we know that's what everyone's busy in the classrooms and that's what they need. You can move to the next slide. The tips and tricks on this. I love this one. It just goes back to being a teacher. Hide fun messages and opportunities inside your morning message. So just to recap, the director is going to go around 9-ish, 9:10. It should take no more than 30 minutes, maybe 20. You're going to have it on a clipboard. The morning message is done. You have secret messages hidden in. The first person to tell me what time our parent open house starts on Monday gets a surprise. I'm using the 5 languages of appreciation, and that's what their prize will be. Maybe they're a coffee drinker and they'll get a Starbucks prize. Maybe they really want to go early because they've got a child to get off the school bus. You can go early today. I'll come cover for you for that 30 minutes. You got the answer to the question right first. Yay. And those little things go such a long way. Anyone that can correctly name all 5 of our core values to me while you're reading this message gets excused from tonight's meeting. Maybe tonight's meeting is about core values and they already know it. Maybe tonight's meeting is repeat, and so it's fine if you let them off for the meeting. You can also, if you do this, make sure that they catch up on what they missed at the meeting as well. I'm not promoting letting people out of meetings that are mandatory, but I am just giving you an example of something staff love if they don't have to come back to work that night. That's a really good way to get them to read. The goal is for them to read and receive and retain your morning message. So these are cute little tricks to do it. And you'd be surprised how many times they don't do it. And so once you start doing this, it makes a big difference. You can also ask for volunteers to do things. I'm looking for someone that wants to go to a special event this weekend, the Pumpkin Fest at Lowe's this weekend, and man our booth. Who would like to do it? And then you tell the pay rate. Essential elements. At a designated time, we do it at 9 in the morning. The director walks around the building with morning message. They pass the phones to their assistant director, their front desk person, or an appropriate person, and focuses on staff. It's kind of like floor time. It is floor time for director and staff. They carry the pen. Each staff, you walk into the classroom with your clipboard, you switch places and go hang out with little darlings. finish changing or change the diaper. Maybe you're out on the playground and you're interacting with the children, and the staff quickly scans the message. So it, again, scannable, super important. It's 2 or 3 minutes per person. Once in a while, and depending on the way staff receive information, because this is written, they might slip out in the hall for a minute. You're maintaining ratios, of course, but maybe they just need to get away from that noisy toddler that's crying and go out in the hall and read and receive, understand the information. Then, if they've got a question, they quick ask the question. It is absolutely not a time to say, hey, I need you to watch Little Darling and tell me if you think there's a speech delay. It's not a time to say, I'm mad at Miss Sally across the hall. Can we talk about it? I need off next month for my sister's wedding. That's not the time to talk about any of that. It's a time to just receive information for the day. It's a morning message. It's not a morning book. At staff read and sign. Then the director moves to the next teacher in the room. Should be no more than 30 minutes. I love it if you can do it. Depends how many classrooms. If you have 10 classrooms and it's 3 minutes a classroom, there's your 30 minutes, right? This is during a time when there's no tours. If you absolutely can't have your director walk around and do morning message, this is what I do. It's second choice. It's better than nothing, though. I do 2 clipboards. I print off 2 morning messages, and my buildings have just that sort of rectangular, and they just start in one room. Our rooms are all connected, and they just sort of whisper down the alley with the morning message. They just pass it straight down the building, and everyone receives it, and I collect the clipboards at the end of the hallway. That's when sometimes you're going to get notes written back, maybe clarifying questions. But that's a backup, so you do 2 copies. We can move to the next slide. And we're 4 minutes to spare, I think. I love this part. If the staff asks questions later, you can just simply say, check morning message with a smile on your face. You're not going to be sassy or condescending. Check morning message. When's my break? Check morning message. What should I wear to open house next week? Check morning message. It's all there. And then save it in a 3-hole punch. 3-hole punch it and save it in a binder. Keep it in a specific area, such as your office or break room, kitchen. We are happy to help you customize morning messages. And I think we've got about 4 minutes for questions. I think Kathe will pop back on again.
I am still here. Thank you so much. Wow. No way was I going to cut that off, Kathe. That was
We should have made 2 webinars. I'm sorry.
Fabulous content. We do have some questions, and you guys, sorry, I should have told you from the beginning. I didn't want you to miss any information, but over to the right of your panel bar, close to the bottom says questions. Just type them in there, and we'll take a couple, Kathe, and then you guys don't worry about your questions. We will get them all organized, and Kathe will answer them, and we'll put them in email form. Also, this masterclass will be available for you to view later if you like. We'll be on our website along with this entire year series, which has been completely on staff and staff-related issues. Next masterclass is October 11th, and it is topic full enrollment. Right, Kathe?
Yes.
Okay.
Awesome topic.
Okay. Awesome. Question, and you know why, you will know why I'm taking this question. Can the figure 8 system be used to help manage staff costs?
Ooh, okay. Absolutely, because first of all, you're looking, and that's actually a great point. You're looking and you're making sure they're not overstaffed or, God forbid, understaffed in a classroom. So either, if they're understaffed, it's not going to manage costs, it's going to raise your costs, but of course you can't fool around with that. But if you're overstaffed, also it's a really good coaching method where it's like you catch someone not doing diapering procedure correctly or forgetting to wash children's hands before or after snap. That's safety. But as far as your labor costs, absolutely. And also in terms of labor costs, someone that's shining that maybe does need a raise, or someone that maybe promised they were going to be, the perfect preschool teacher and needs more training and maybe shouldn't make as much, or needs more training, that also relates to labor costs. But the big one would be making sure that you're not overstaffed.
Fantastic. What level of employee would you have perform the figure eight?
I love that question, because you would think it's somebody that's super experienced, and that may be the case. And they certainly need to know what you expect on your rules, your health department regs and whatnot. But sometimes somebody fresher, fresh eyes coming in, depending, you know, I have one girl, Miss Taylor, at one of my schools, that literally she's 19 years old. She's already grooming to be an assistant director because she just has the eye. She can go in a classroom. She actually helps Miss Lauren, who was at Thrive this weekend, with the staff schedule every day. So that's really looking at people's unique strengths and areas, what seat on the bus is best for them. So sometimes the mommies or daddies, people that, you know, have been at home and maybe have different skill sets from other industries are really good at that too. I would also, we've talked, and this all actually has to do with cost too, Kathe. If you're giving anything away to parents, for instance, I have a parent ambassador program. If you're doing anything like that, that's a really good use for parents if they have the right skill set. I've got a couple elementary school teachers that are on our parent ambassador discount, and that's they're public school teachers. So have them do your figure eights. You can really get creative, and really it's a customized system that we're happy to help with in terms of our consulting, or you can shoot me an email and I can answer questions or chat briefly as well.
Awesome. One more. Sure. I love this one too, and I had several conversations around this at our Boston event last week. What would you consider to be acceptable rate of conversion of people touring?
For tours?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're off of figure eights. Figure eights are going to build the tours, and figure eights are going to help you wow your customer. I think if it's 50%, you're really good, but you've got to do the math on that. And the reason I say normally, if I think we're good at sales, it should be higher. That would make logical sense. But it would be higher if you're really building that relationship ahead of time with the customer. I'm taking that phone call and I'm really getting to know them. I'm deciding, are they an A customer? Will they be with me a long time? Do they have multiple children? Maybe figure out where they work. So then you're going to know if they're qualifying for how much you're charging. You're going to let them talk a little bit more than you would think, so you can see what their core values are and what they're looking for. If you pre-screen and weed out your C and D customers and prioritize tours with the A's and B's, your conversion rate should be much higher. If you're just letting anyone and their brother tour, which is a great method because maybe they're not going to enroll, but they know 100 other people that might, so it's still a really good strategy, your conversion rate would be a little bit lower. But you're still building relationships, and you never know. Maybe they're going to get a better job and they can afford you then. So I really like to build relationships, and one of our core values, well, we have 5 core values, but they're all sprinkled with kindness. So unless someone comes in that is, you know, clearly not a fit, I'm touring them. Or, you know, obviously if I get a creepy feeling, I would never tour them. But in general, conversion rates, really, it's honestly, it's your brain working. How can you look and determine if they're a fit? If someone's on a wait list someplace else, they're not they don't want me as their number one. They're not going to be happy. They're on a wait list at the local Head Start, for instance, and they're going to borrow me until then. Or they're at the local, we've got university in our town. They really want to be right by little darling. I get that. And by the way, the university charges less, so they don't have to pay as much. I get that. But I'm not going to enroll little Henry in my school if I have a choice of someone else, if I'm not there first. Because what little Henry's going to go through is not right. He's going to come to my school and be a little rooster for 2 months and then have a transition. And all the other little friends of Henry have a transition, and the teachers are frustrated. And guess what? All the other parents in the classroom think, what's wrong? Why did Henry leave? Henry left because they want to pay $600, not $1,200. So it goes back to your question on conversion rates. That's where you're going to have more tours and really funnel and fine tune, looking at every customer individually, just like we do every child, actually.
Love that. Terrific. Okay. I said one more, but now there's one more because I think it's a quick answer. Is your figure eight?
I doubt it.
Is your figure eight a mental checklist or is it in writing?
Oh, it's in writing. Oh, for sure. Sorry, that's a great clarifying question. Thank you to whoever asked that. So when I talked about visualizing it, at first, I was wanting you to go through your building in your mind and think, what are the key unique selling points in your building? What are the things you really want to highlight? Or what are your weak areas? Maybe your kitchen always looks bad, or maybe your 2-year-old room always looks weak. So make sure you have those first before you even go through your building with your pen and paper. So then you develop it. You develop it in a figure eight. And to emphasize figure eight, you go through your building in one way in the morning, come back, and at the opposite way at the end of the day. So it's always different, same thing, but different points of view, different times of the day. So I visualize it first, then I create it, and I gave you examples on the slides kind of based on my figure eight and my building. And we also pre-front-loaded the information about how a restaurant might do it. But you'll do it your way, but it's definitely on paper. And just like morning message, you're going to print it off, or well, it'll be printed. You'll check it. You'll have that follow-up, which is super important. Who's following up? Who's putting it on the handyman list? Who's ordering the supply, the certain light bulbs at Lowe's? And so, and it's in your 3-ring binder, or it's scanned. All of us are trying to use less pencil and paper. It's scanned and saved on your computer. And so you've got that follow-up and you're tracking the redundancy piece. That's a great question.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It was such a neat, fresh group of ideas for our industry, and we appreciate, and our team, and on behalf of our guests, how much energy and research and time you put into bringing wonderful ideas on how to make this work a little more enjoyable, make our staff more engaged and happier, and everything there trickles down to our main mission, children and families. So thank you very much.
I love it.
We will see you guys next month. If we can, in the meantime.